Welcome everyone to our third episode of the Vibe Cell series podcast. We have here a very, very dear guest who is Toni Ventura.
Thank you for having me.
The head of sales of Enterprise Bot, a massive
Correct.
referent in the AI space right now. So Toni, thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this chat today.
Yes, it's going to be amazing. So I'm really excited about getting your perspective on all of your learnings that you have acquired through the years. And Toni, something that I love about your profile is that you're coming from sales development. Like you were an SDR. I think you're kind of the by the book success story of like how sales individual contributors go up the ladder and actually become leaders, managing teams and making high performing teams. So tell us about how has your experience been, and I'd love to hear this story.
Yeah. So I would say that basically, I think it's well summarized, and and that's a little bit what I'm also looking for when I hire people, because I really think that first you need to go through the pain, the mud, and so on and so forth. So I started my career as an SDR in sales, and then had to prove myself. Then evolved into account executive, or let's say junior account executive, account executive, and then a more senior one until today, where I'm leading a team of 12, 15 people all over the world, mainly focused in EMEA. And I think it has been a fun road until now, and I'm very, very excited of what the next months are going to come. We're already in May, which for sales is always like, okay, it's almost half of the year, so we are going full gas.
I love it. And maybe it would be interesting to know a bit about what you do at Enterprise Bot, like as a company itself, because you're having a very innovative solution related to voice, agents, but not only, many other things. So maybe for the audience, that would be also interesting for them to know like what exactly you're selling.
Yeah, so Enterprise Bot was founded in 2017, and I like to call it like we were founded pre-AI hype era, right? So we have seen the whole evolution of the bot space, or artificial intelligence space. As my CEO used to say, AI was more artificial than intelligent, right? And now we really see the power of AI. We're harnessing it, we're bringing it to customers. So basically, at the end of the day, what do? We provide conversational AI solutions in an omni-channel way. So we cover all channels: voice, chat, email, in any digital channel, WhatsApp, WeChat, whatever you wanna use. But not only that, right? So at the end, the vision that we have is very exciting, and I think we're the only ones that are doing this, which is basically we cover the full spectrum, we cover the full, let's say, customer journey and employee journey from a conversational AI perspective, meaning that an interaction starts with a call, with an email, with a chat, with an in-store experience, right? So we have agents for that, right? Voice bots and email bots and agents and so on and so forth, right? Then we come to the replacement of, let's say, the IVR, classic IVR in the contact center. Very frustrating for the users, but very frustrating for the company, because you need to manage a lot of let's say, flows. And then comes to the automatic resolution with agentic agents, which is a very big change, to be honest. And our customers love it. And then we would continue into the agent assist part, where we're helping the agents in contact centers, and not only to do their job faster, better, less stressful. And then we go into the reporting part and the training of agents, and we close the loop with the reporting part, or we call it AI QA, AI quality assurance. It allows us to close the loop in terms of, hey, I can tell you which bots are working well, which not, which agents are working well, human agents are working well or not, and so on and so forth. So we support our customers throughout the customer journey, and I think we're the only ones.
That's amazing.
Which makes it super exciting for us.
Yeah, I really see that you're having a holistic approach into like the solution that you offer for companies. I've been saying like you're working with some of the biggest enterprises in the world, right? And when we talk about enterprise deals, that also means a very strategic way of selling. So can you please elaborate a bit about how have you learned about selling to the enterprise, which is not for granted, right? You need to be very on top of like what the company you're selling to is actually doing. You need to go really much into depth in regards to all of those pain points and how your solution helps. So could you please describe a little bit how you managed to develop this expertise
Yeah.
in the enterprise space?
So, yeah, maybe I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience, but also other people's experience. And I have to say that I was lucky enough to fall into this role in the end, right? The sales role, because I think that's something that, that's not something that existed as much maybe 15, 20 years ago, right? When we were finishing university, or you needed to decide, to university, what are you going to do? What are you going to study, right? My mom always used to say, oh, go study economics. And we're like, okay, let's see, right? And, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I believe that it's a very uncommon job, which requires lots of skills. And yes, it's well paid, but because it's very difficult, right? So I think in enterprise deals, and you know it also yourself with your background, if you plan to close a 1 million deal, on average, statistics say that you need to talk to 72 different people, right? That's a lot of convincing, right? So you need a set of skills that, yes, you develop them over time, but you need to know a little bit about everything. And what I always say, right? So is sales a science or an art? And I say that it's a mix of both, because there's a clear process, right? If we use, one of my favorite methodologies for qualification, which is MEDPIC, right, or MEDPICR. So there's a clear, defined process of qualification, and then also there's like some sales processes, right? Now this is the handbook. If you give the handbook to someone, they're also probably maybe they fail. Why? Because you need also the art component, right? I think you need to have it within you. You need to have some curiosity, right? I think good salespeople are very curious because they want to know why and why and why and why and why. And that's how you end up building great deals and convincing a bunch of people to utilize a solution that is going to eventually have a return on investment for them, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more with you. And yes, so I think like the curiosity component, also the listening part, extremely important, right? On how do you actually ask the right questions and then listen on how to connect those responses to how your solution can help.
Which I think, and sorry for interrupting, but I think this is a very interesting point where I think AI, or not even AI, but AI can help us a lot to determine, hey, how am I doing? Because I can check some of the dashboards that I have, and I see, okay, in the conversations that I'm leading, or that my sales team is leading, 70% of them customer talks, and 30% the sales representative talks. And this is a good ratio, right? Would be horrible if it would be the other way around, right? So definitely listening is an important piece, absolutely.
Super nice. Okay, so Toni, of course, like listening, I think is very important, like the 30% versus 70% ratio on the customer side. How do you see like the future of AI native solutions for salespeople? Like what are the different things where you see value on some things that are not yet being worked so proactively in the industry, but they can really make a difference as you move forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're talking here also for a reason, but I think that solutions like VibeSell, where you are actually supporting and assisting the AE, or not only the AE, the SDR, which I think it's also very important. That is a complete game changer, because I see it as, okay, I can get faster to it's time to value. I shorten it, because in the case of the SDRs, right? So they come into a company. Sometimes they don't know what the technology is about, etc. With such technologies, right, where maybe they are surfacing information, guiding them, helping them, but not only, and that's also maybe something that we're going to talk about later, which is the feedback loop. I think elite salespeople are disciplined, but also they are relentlessly looking for feedback, learning every day. So I think these type of tools are great to create this compound interest in terms of improvement. And then I think there's a very key part when it comes to sales, which is objection handling. And that's one of my favorite topics, because when you're talking to someone at the end, you kind of have one chance actually to make a good impression, yes, of course, but to really ace the this objection handling, because the person is going to say, okay, I feel comfortable with the answer that this person gave me, I trust the person, and so on and so forth. And if you do it in consecutively in many ways, or also in different occasions, then you build trust, right? So, and also because it's difficult with the amount of information that we have nowadays, it's very, very difficult to remember everything. So having these type of solutions help a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also especially with your type of solution, because it's not like you're selling a commodity, right? Like you're selling something that also has a lot of technical know-how that is demanded from the salesperson to be able to correctly articulate that message. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like objection handling, being able to connect the dots. And yeah, also I'm very curious because Toni, like I think you're one of the few people that I know that speaks more languages than I do. And you speak like 7 languages. And actually, fun fact, we come from the same city, we studied in the same school.
Correct.
But tell us a bit about also your story and how like this kind of multicultural version of Toni has actually been helpful to be in a sales environment. How do you actually leverage this superpower in your day-to-day?
Yeah. So no, yeah. So I'm also from Barcelona. So studied in a French school. So you can chuck in already some languages. Then I lived 3 years in Russia, 1 year in Taiwan, and then I've been living in Zurich since almost 10 years. 10 years has been a great ride so far. And I think the fact that I luckily speak that many languages helps me communicate with almost any customer in Europe or in the Europe that I operate. But also to have this awareness and empathy in terms of culture. So half of our company is Indian. It's based in Bangalore, and as you know, right, like there's some culturally we are very different. Same as a Spanish person, a French person, an Italian person, or a German or a Swiss. We are all European, but we are a little bit different. So you need to be able to read the room, understand some expressions, also some manners, right, which might differ country to country. But all in all, I think it's very fun for me. So my week might be, first call with my whole team, international. Then I go to a French call with a customer in France. Then I help my Spanish AE, I support him in a Spanish call, completely also different culture. Then I go to India. Then I go to Middle East. So it's really good fun for me. I really, really, really like it.
And you're traveling to India, right, in the upcoming weeks, you mentioned?
Yes, yeah. Last year I did 35 countries. This year, it's going to be also interesting. So yeah, I'm traveling to India to do a couple of events with a big contact center solution, and and then maybe Middle East, which is it's a very, very interesting region for us, because one of the differentiating points of Enterprise Bot is that we have voice agents, right? In an agentic manner, obviously, and we're very good at languages because it's in our DNA, right?
Okay.
So we are an Indian company, so an Indian-Swiss company, and in both countries they have lots of languages. So as you know, in Switzerland there's minimum four languages. We can actually also do voice bots in Romansh.
No way.
And also we do many other voice bots or voice agents in many different Indian languages, but also Arabic, right? And I think we're one of the only ones in the world that can do high quality Arabic voice bots, for example, on premise.
Okay.
Right? So that gives us completely a competitive edge. And it's very good fun, I have to say.
I imagine that must be awesome. And as we were discussing before, also sales is about building relationships, no? Being able to also create this intimacy with the person in front of you. So at the end, like language is also a cultural component that helps strengthen this relationship. And someone with who you speak their own language is always going to be better understood and feel closer to you.
Absolutely. I think Nelson Mandela said that when you speak, in our case, right, when you speak in English to someone or in their second language, you speak to their brain. But if you speak their first language, you speak to their heart, which changes the conversation completely.
So people buy with emotions or with rational?
Yeah.
What
So
would
I
you
think
say?
look, I was having this conversation, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we did a demo with a customer and so on and so forth, and I was telling the sales guys, hey, we still need to make it exciting. People want to be excited in their jobs, right? They want to see cool demos, and obviously I'm a very also rational guy. So I'm always going to be business case driven. So that's the very first thing that I ask a salesperson if they want me to do an investment, or the company that we invest an event or something like that, right? Or even if we take an opportunity, right? I always ask for the business case, because if there's no business case, even if they love the solution, they're never going to buy, right? So yes, you need to be super business case oriented, numbers driven, especially in today's market where we see that decisions are shifting from the business back to IT. So CIOs, solution architects, they have a lot of power, especially in AI. But at the end of the day, you need to differentiate yourself, and you need to be fun. It needs to be fun. It needs to be a pleasant sales experience for the customer, right? The same as if you would compare it to watches, to cars, to houses. It needs to be a nice experience, and that's what we try to build at Enterprise Bot.
How do you build a strong sales culture within your teams? Because you've been now in this kind of phase within Enterprise Bot where you had to build a team from the ground up. So for all of those AEs that want to become sales leaders, how would you advise them to actually establish this sales culture and also hire the right people?
Yeah. So I think so. Yes. So I took the role of head of sales about a year and a half ago, and there has been a lot of transformation within the sales team. It's basically almost a new sales team. I think except one person, everybody else is new. Which is great because it creates this mindset change, right? Yeah. Because we aim high, we want to be a unicorn, so we need to give gas. And in order to give gas, it needs to be, you need to be hungry, you need to be disciplined, you need to have a different mindset, right? So I think, one of the things that we did, or it looks like we did quite well, is in the hiring part. And that's absolutely not only me. I think with the management team, we collaborate well and complement each other very well. So what we are basically looking for at the end of the day is people that come with a network and that are experts in contact center and maybe not AI per se, but they have a flair for AI, right? Because it's really simple. When you have your network, and you know already who you're selling to, it's super easy. And everyone in my sales team it comes from this scene, and I have to say that the first week, even before they start, they already have customer meetings, which I love. Obviously, doing this at a bigger scale, it's more difficult because I think you have more turnover. You have the pool of people that you can select from might be bigger, but maybe people are not willing to change. So it's true that we're very niche, but so far it's working out well. And let's see how this year finishes.
It's going to be exciting. And we had a great meeting yesterday in your office, and we're kind of brainstorming a lot of things that could be done in the AI space.
Yes.
For companies in this kind of high performance culture, like growing fast, scalability. So I'm generally very excited about how you're kind of envisioning as well this path to becoming a unicorn.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting. What would you say is the most important things to kind of create this scalability, and how do you set up this kind of sales machine that actually works?
Yeah, internally we call it a well-oiled sales machine, right? And everybody now is calling it GTM, right? Which is yeah, it's true. Like everybody wants to, or we all want to achieve this repeatable sales motion that simplifies everything. And I think everything starts with who you need to have very clear what your focus is. So who is your ICP? Who are you selling to? Which problem are you solving? And you don't need to solve thousands of problems, right? You just need to solve one problem very well, and then just rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to achieve. So it takes, what we're doing now is really rethinking, okay, which are the problems and the solutions, and therefore piece of software or solution that we want to sell that actually is beneficial for the customer, but is also profitable for us, right? So you mentioned something very interesting before. You mentioned, okay, you're selling something that is not a commodity. Fully agree, except for maybe chatbots, right? So chatbots, they have been around for more than 15 years, maybe even 20 years. So I would say that now they became a little bit a commodity. We are extremely good at those. I think we're one of the best in the world. But in terms of, again, return on investment and business case, maybe that's not where the money is for our customers, right? Maybe the biggest return comes from a voice conversation. So a call in Europe typically costs between 6 and 10 euros. You have 1 million calls. Imagine it that you automate 20% of those. Automatic ROI, right?
Yeah.
So so we're really focusing now on what is it that we need to focus on. I think we're finding some plays. I really like to go with plays, like, okay, voice bots for banking, right? For the banking sphere, or email for the let's say travel sector, right? So I think you need to find your place, and then you need to properly adapt the product around it, because our product is industry specific. So when we talk about agents, you can select already a pre-trained agent for a specific use case. For example, you're doing fraud detection or authentication. We have pre-trained agents for authentication for specific industries.
Love it. No, that's super valuable. And also, when you are actually verticalizing the solution, that means also that your salespeople need to also speak the customer language.
Exactly.
How do you manage to do that?
Exactly, and that's the biggest. That creates the biggest difference, right? So when you have a sales rep or like an AE that knows exactly how the banking world looks like, with solutions like Temenos or Finova or Avaloq, then you can really dig deeper into the use cases, because at the end you need to go to the use case, right? You need to go and pitch, hey, Mr. Banker, you have this problem, this is the solution, and we solved it with this customer already. Do you want to talk?
Yeah.
Right? So, and that applies to all industries, right?
So the importance of the customer success stories, so always being able to articulate that very well, and like who you're working with that had a similar problem to the one you might perceive in this other company. Then also we know about how common it is to build also business cases. So would you say that all of the deals need to have a business case that need to kind of come with a proposal, so the customers feel like, okay, I'm gonna go with this investment? Or have you also seen deals where like no business case is needed and you can just like make the deal without justifying the numbers and the ROI?
So you always need to justify the numbers and the ROI.
Yeah.
Even like especially in the enterprise sector, I have not seen deals, at least reasonable big deals, that come with no ROI, to be honest. And I think it's going to be less and less and less the case. I'm talking again, right, for the framing, we're talking about mid-market to enterprise, right? So enterprise would be the AXAs, the Zurichs, the DHLs of the world, and mid-market would be, I don't know, like maybe in Switzerland, a cantonal bank, or something more a little bit smaller, mid-market. We don't focus at all on small customers. So we have very clearly identified clearly who are the companies that we want to work with. And if there's no threshold, so there's a threshold, if they don't go above the threshold, we basically don't serve them. Because again, you need to, especially in conversational AI, you need to achieve you need to have a minimum amount of volume so the business case makes sense.
Yeah.
And we have rejected many customers that had great ideas, but there's no business case. I'm going to take your money if you want, but it makes no sense, right? So, because at the end of the day, we want to have long-lasting relationships and business relationships. So there needs to be value for the customer. If there's no value, it makes No sense, because especially in the stage that we are a scale up, aiming to grow high, to grow big. We're only talking about sales now, but we have our dear colleagues from CSM and the PS team, the professional services team, which are doing the implementations. Like, if I go to them with, hey, I can sell a voice bot for 30,000 of license value in ARR and a super difficult implementation, or I can sell a 300,000 voice agent with a relatively simple implementation. Which one do you take? The one that is more scalable. So that's also, we need to take that into consideration.
Makes total sense, and I couldn't agree more. Like always, like also challenging the own sales reps, when like all the steps of the sales cycle are not actually being done the right moment, the right way. So yeah, justifying the price is vital.
Absolutely. And what I like, it's so funny to me to see the mistakes that I was doing in the past, where I was, way more, a junior AE having hope. No, I hope that, I'm hoping that hope doesn't exist in sales, right? So there's like sometimes AEs that come to you like, yeah, but it looks very good and so on and so forth. And they are very excited and very engaged. Okay, did you look at the numbers? And I sit down with them, and 1 minute after they're like, okay, yeah, it makes no sense. Because it makes no sense. And in sales, I think we're also discussing that yesterday, right? In sales, one of my advice, right, would be you need to be ruthless in terms of protecting your time. You will get meeting invitations, you will get invited to events, you will get, invited to maybe podcasts, and you need to be ruthless in terms of, your time, because your time is the biggest asset that you have, and you cannot spend a minute outside an activity that is selling, right, and chasing the sell. Especially if you plan to grow and become, a senior AE and maybe one day a head of sales. I think you need to be absolutely ruthless.
Yeah, I fully agree. And of course, like I was talking with many leaders that would tell me, actually, our A's, when they put like next steps or close date, it's kind of a best hope of like, yeah, maybe this could happen, but you need to actually plan. You need to ask the tough questions. Like even like to the customer, you also need to challenge the customer on whether they have the decision-making power internally. Because sometimes you might be talking to someone that
is a nobody. Nice guy, but is a nobody.
Exactly. So you need to understand the dynamics of power through the organization. You were mentioning like those enterprise deals, 70 stakeholders. Which guys could actually be your champions? Or which executives could actually be your challengers? How do you kind of map the entire ecosystem and actually touch on those dynamics
Absolutely.
to transmit your message?
Fully agree. I think this point, it's really connected to character. And I think to be a great salesperson, you need to have a strong character. And sometimes it means saying no to the customer and say, no, I don't accept this. This is not what we agreed, right? Because you also need to make, you need to respect yourself and to own and honor the master of this work, which is, selling. And yeah, you need to be ruthless with yourself, but also sometimes with the customer. And in a nice way, always. You need to be polite and so on and so forth, but you need to have a strong character.
And it's for the common good, like the one of your customer and the one of your company. Agree. So yeah, I cannot agree more with this. And I think it's very important. And as you were saying, like many younger AEs or sellers are like, yeah, let's try to like not challenge ourselves. Let's try to be very optimistic, and this at the end can also kill many deals. Okay, so Toni, you've been doing sales for your entire life, like 10 years right now. Could you please guide us on what do you think have been the biggest learnings on the person you are today through selling?
Very good question. Yeah, it has been more than 10 years actually. I would say what I said before, so protect your time at all costs. Build discipline. So I think AI now comes into play, which is great because AI can help you build this part of discipline. To me, discipline means preparation meeting before a customer call or a customer demo, right? Briefing after, right? AI helps you with that. And also you need to do that with the team, right? If you work with a solution consultant, with a solution architect, right? I think this, feedback loop is super important. And then also, what I've always done in my career was Sunday evening, and to make it a little bit more fun, then maybe I would just put some music, or I would just prepare a nice cup of tea, and I would prepare my week, right? I think planning is super, super important, because then you know what you need to focus on that week, right? So I think discipline is the, forget about hopes. And then if we get a little bit deeper into methodologies, then I'm a big fan of MEDPIC. So we use MEDPIC at Enterprise Bot. And I would say there are two components that are very, very important in that. The first one is the metrics, which I spoke about before. So the business case, right? You need to have a business case. And the sooner you get it, the more it's going to help you. I hear often my sales team or other salespeople saying, yeah, but there's no compelling event. Okay, red flag. If there's no compelling event, red flag. But can you generate the demand, and maybe you can generate also that change, and you change it through business case validated by the customer, because you say, hey, every month that you're not switching, or every month that you're not implementing this, you're losing 100, 200,000, 300,000, right? And then it makes them think, right? So metrics is one. And then the second one, which for me is absolutely crucial and non-negotiable, is you have to have an excellent relationship with your champions. Your champion is the most important person in the deal, because especially in enterprise deals, if you have a good champion, he or she is going to tell you the politics within the company. And he's going to help you navigate those politics, and he or she will help also you prepare meetings. And it's like politics at the end. It's like house of cards, right? I need to speak to this person first, get their agreement, and then this person will convince the other one together, and then suddenly you have a full room convinced, right? So champions, it's like, and I always say, treat well your champion. Is your champion still selling for you? So you need to, take them out for dinner, have fun, meet their families, and be human. I think at the end, like, some of my champions have been with me in several companies, and I love it, because we now ended up being kind of friends, and we do activities together that are not work related, because you have done so much with them that it's great. And I think at the end we also have to have fun, right? It's not only cash and money, and I think it's also really important you need to have fun at the job that you do. Otherwise, you will never be able to do it well, and you need to be passionate with the things that you do.
No, this is what you're saying. I think it's amazing. Like, first of all, like, putting pressure on the pain point. I think that's actually what really drives action. And like, when you find a pain point, it can be qualitative, it can be quantitative, but it can also be personal. Like, how does that pain point, like, how does making or losing actually $200,000 per month impacts the role of that person you're talking to? And this really generates, like, it's uncomfortable, to be talking about those things, but they know that it's for the better of the company and also the role and their agenda, right? And also what you're mentioning on the personal relationship, I always think, like, whenever a customer actually invites you to their birthday, or invites you to their wedding, or to their kid's wedding, it means you're doing something great.
Yes.
And yeah, so.
And I some people might feel bad thinking about that. Oh yeah, you only do it for the business, but actually not. It's not only for the business. It's also because if I would change company, or I would, one day open a restaurant, I would still be friends with them, because it's good fun. And I think it's both win, It's a win-win situation, because whenever you do a great project, right, your champion, the economic buyer, whoever has been involved, they can, get exposure. And something that I try to do always is I try to bring my champions to events that they speak about the great thing that they did, right? I think this is important. I met once a great manager at BMC, an Italian guy, and he had a specific slide where he had 11 components that you must know about your champion. You know, which football team they support, what is their favorite food, how many kids do they have, whether he goes to church or not, or, you know, these type of things.
Love it.
And yeah, it's cool, you know, like it helps you, you know, connect more with the person. And I try to be a very genuine person. So you will know if I have a good day or if I have a bad day, or if I'm happy or I'm not happy, or if I'm happy with the work that you do or not with, or not happy, right? And I think we must stay genuine, especially in this world where we're gonna see, I'm not a guru, right? And I'm not that arrogant to be a guru and to predict what the world will look like in 5 years, because 6 months ago, we couldn't even predict that there would be a massive migration from GPT users to Claude users, for instance, right? And God knows how is it gonna look like in 5 years. But one of the things that I do think that is gonna happen is that if we are all using the same tools with the same models and we're asking the same questions, we're all gonna get the same results. So the key question here is, how do I keep differentiating myself as a company, but also how do I keep differentiating myself as an individual, right? I don't want to be replaced with an AI, you know, account executive, right? I think, I don't know if that could happen in the enterprise world, right? In other areas, absolutely yes. But therefore, I need to, you know, be genuine, be different, be real, and yeah, be honest with oneself at the end.
I love what you're saying about like this transition from OpenAI into Anthropic, no, on the models that are being used the most predominantly. Also, like they overcame OpenAI in revenue on the Anthropic side not so long ago. I know you're also a heavy AI user and you're using Anthropic and Claude on your processes. My question here is more directed to the following. So which companies do you think will be the ones thriving when it comes to AI native sales?
Great question. I would need to give it a proper thought because it's a very complex topic. I will just maybe boil it down more to my situation with our team, and also a little bit what I see. So one of the, just a small parenthesis, right? A small break. So what is super exciting about being in Zurich, where we are headquartered, is that our neighbors are IBM, OpenAI, the ETH, Salesforce, Anthropic, Google. So there's a crazy ecosystem, and I believe that Zurich is now the AI powerhouse of Europe because everyone is here. You go to a bar and you meet someone from Anthropic, or you meet someone from OpenAI, and you meet someone from IBM Watson. And so it's super exciting what is happening now. And coming back to your question, in our sales team, if you're not using AI, then you're not part of the sales team. Everyone in our company is massively using AI. And I think I told you that yesterday, one of the first things that I do when I start a new job is, what can I automate?
I love that.
Because I only have 24 hours. I work a lot of hours, right? But since I cannot have an assistant, a human assistant, or a team of people working for me, I need to have AI assistants, right? So you need to leverage as much as you can the use of AI. And I would be pissed if someone gives me a presentation where they have spent 4 hours and they have not used Claude, for a presentation for slides. You don't need to do slides anymore, right? Why would you?
Agreed.
So yes, you might do some fine tuning, right? But why would you spend 4 hours doing slides? That's a very bad use of your time. And your time, as I said before, it's very expensive. It's your most valuable asset. So you better be using that. And it's not only saving time, it's amplifying what you can do. What actually excites me about AI is not the things that we can replace or reduce. right? So, like a meeting brief, right? So I finish the meeting, transcript with Vibe Cell. So transcript, it gives me the summary. That's fantastic. But what is very interesting to me is what are these insights, how can I connect all the other pieces of the puzzle to give me great insights, right? That's where the real value is. That's what I think. Because the other thing I can do myself is going to take me more time. But the other thing I cannot do, my brain is not wired in a way that I can look at 14 sources at the same time and I can remember everything that has happened on 113 deals for this quarter, right?
No, humanly possible.
It's impossible. So I'm very excited about this part.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And also on how do we envision Vibes? At the end, we see it as a sales operating system. And when you have a sales operating system, you can actually go into these analysis of patterns, analysis of actually what's working well in the company versus what's not working. Maybe you actually find some golden nuggets where you actually leverage your decisions based on these data. And thanks to these data, your teams can actually thrive, can shine. And of course, we discussed this also during our last conversations, but how can we also make sure that we do not reinvent the wheel? Because Anthropic with Claude is doing very valuable things. Some things are becoming commoditized, like doing a summary with AI. Like that's not
everybody
the goal,
does.
right?
Everybody does it today. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are like so many note-taker assistants. Like the point here is not taking notes; it's how do you make proactive intelligence through the sales cycle. And also something very important, I think, is the power that it gives you to have something that is verticalized into the sales motion.
I think this is the biggest difference, but not only for VibeCell, but for any company aiming to achieve repeatability. Because nowadays, being a generalist doesn't help anymore. It doesn't help because a random guy on a Friday afternoon with a couple of beers, he can take Claude Code or Claude Cowork, and he can build a SaaS, and that's it. That's not what you're looking for. I think what you're looking for is for really this top 20% that is going to make the big difference for the users that are going to use the solution. I think that's very much it. And I think everybody's seeing it, right? Like also buyers and CIOs and all and people involved in AI topics, they are really looking forward for they're looking for this specialization, right? So I think that's the route that we all should take. We need to become specialists again, not generalists, and hopefully have fun on the way and deliver a lot of value to customers.
Super nice. Yeah, Toni, I also wanted to ask you about something that is very important on actually having a nice conversion rate. And I think a lot of account executives are actually not really nailing that part. And I think you have some good expertise on how to achieve that well. Is actually how to prepare for a meeting, to be on top of your game. So how do you actually do that in order to shine once you're in front of the customer?
Actually, funny that you mentioned it. I was lucky enough to be part of a company, Zurich-based, whose name is Sharpeny, and they do software for meeting management. So initially they started for the board of directors, right, for recurring meetings, and then for leadership and so on and so forth, right. And there I learned a lot about the meeting management science. Actually, there's a science. There's books about it, right. And I think for sales, what really matters is 3 components, okay? The first one is the pre-meeting phase, right? So I want to prepare myself to the meeting before I was basically, maybe going through my emails, going through the notes on my CRM, and then preparing myself. Now, AI can do that part for me, which it's amazing because it saves me a lot of time, right? And it also can give me insights on things that I might not have thought of, which is even better for the conversation, right? And to provide even more value to the customer. Then there's the second phase. There's the in-meeting phase, right? Which there is where we talk about the assistant, right? So I can have a meeting. Obviously, if I'm having the meeting in person, maybe it's a little bit more challenging, also possible. But if I'm having a meeting on Teams, on Meet or whatever, right? Nowadays, also, thanks to VibeCell, then I'm able to address things on the spot, be it handling an objection or giving information to the person that I don't know of. Like, so, okay, can you tell me about, the GPU usage that I need, or the requirements that I need to, I'm not a technical guy, but thanks to this, I can surface, so I can get that information. And at the end of the day, the sales cycle stays shorter or gets shorter. The person gets the info that they want on the spot, and you look like a pro. So I think that's amazing.
It's amazing. I'm very excited about this because like some of the things that I hated before using VibeCell was like getting a question on the spot
and not being able to reply. Yeah.
Just counting a deal, like when you don't have access to real-time guidance, the number of times that you will need to kind of gently push back in a very polite way into the question, like, this I will need to check internally. Let me come back to you on the email. Yeah. First of all, you have a new to-do on your list. Yeah. So it's already a pain. Second, you need to talk with someone else on your team, organize a meeting internally, ask for the question. Insane the amount of time that you lose.
And even if you just have other things that may help you, like a knowledge base or whatever, right? It's not on the spot, and therefore imagine this person now is a Thursday afternoon, and on Friday they go on vacation for 3 weeks. Like, you already lost 3 weeks plus a couple of more until they catch up with their emails. 1 month is gone. Whereas if you would have, replied on the spot, and it's true that it's an exaggeration, but small things in sales matter, right? So you reply on the spot, and the guy says, okay, good, happy, I'm sending a follow-up email to the right person, and then you continue the conversation while this person is on vacation. Or the person might not be on vacation, but there might be overlaps of agendas and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So, and then the third part, which I think we all do now, and if someone is not doing it, then they must do it. It's the post-meeting, right? So post-meeting, you get the tasks, you get the protocol, or you get the notes, the summary. I think this ties back to the discipline that I was talking about before. So, there are basic things like meeting in, meeting out, right? So whenever you have a meeting, there always needs a next meeting. But in terms of discipline, you always need to send as fast as possible the summary of your meeting with the next tasks to the person to achieve two things. The first one is because there's actually things that you need to do or they need to do, there's tasks and so on. But the second one also is that you want to come across as professional, as on top of your game, and you want to make them feel as they are the most important customer in the world, right? Even if it's a small company, right? It's important to treat customers as VIPs all the time, right? So I think dividing it in these three phases, there's a lot of room for improvement, and in our sales organization is very, very ingrained. Pre-meeting, briefing with the team, alone, during the meeting, and then post-meeting, which is also very, 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 very important.
And how you actually log all this information in the system, no? So
absolutely, because we are very busy. Everybody's busy, right? So you want to make sure that you're not jumping from one meeting to the other without recording it. If you have a system that does it for you, then it's a big and it's not about so it is about saving a lot of time, absolutely, because you need to balance work-life balance, even though we need to work a little bit more nowadays if you're trying to grow. But it's about having the information, and I believe that any AE that is hearing us, or any business insights, or any head of sales will rely to this. CRM must be clean always, right? You need to have that data. If you don't have that data, it makes it very difficult for a company to make decisions. Now that I'm head of sales, I see why it is so critical. I've been always very diligent in keeping my CRM clean always, because it helps me first, and then it helps my company, right? But I see it now as a head of sales, right? If I don't have enough data and good quality data, I cannot take calls whether I need to hire someone for a specific market or if I need to develop a specific feature for one specific use case in that specific market, right?
I fully understand.
It's super important.
You're someone that is extremely determined, also very ambitious. You have this grit to succeed and challenge the status quo as a salesperson. How do you manage to find people that can also go in the same direction as you like building this team that you've put together of like 15 people?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's twofold. The first one is you attract what you portray, right? So I think if you're very excited and passionate and energetic, people that are not like that, they will say, "Ooh, too much for me." So I think that's the first thing, and looking for this type of character intelligence, curiosity, and then the second one, as they say in Italian, l'appetito viene mangiando, which means you get the appetite comes while you are already eating, which means to me that once you are in the job, you need to keep this energy and you need to keep people excited and have it comes with the office. It's like the office, the culture that you have, and so on and so forth. It needs to push this energy of, hey, let's deliver value, let's sell, let's have fun. It needs to be very very channeled, and that's exactly a topic that we're really working on now. Next week we are doing our retreat in Barcelona, so we're taking half of our company, all the European teams, we're bringing them to Barcelona. It's going to be super good fun for 3 days, and we're basically splitting. It's going to be 1 day of super good fun, dinner, tour. Going to the beach. It's going to be really, really nice. And then the second day is going to be work, right? Because we see it this way, right? At the end of the day, if you want a person to give their best, they need to be on their positive vibration, right? So there's this great picture where you have a line, right? And in this line, you can be below or you can be above. And that line is the difference between, the cognitive aspect of, am I creative, am I positive, am I looking always for solutions instead of looking for problems, right? So we want to keep as much as possible people above the line, and we're societal, right? We're mammals, so we need this society and ambience and people around us that push for this culture.
I couldn't agree more. So, Toni, with that in mind, what do you see Enterprise Bot in the next 2 to 5 years?
So, look, we are very, very, very committed to one mission. And the mission is basically becoming the number one conversational layer that is going to sit on top of all systems of record. Imagine your Salesforces, your HubSpots, your internally made CRMs, ERPs, whatever you want to call it, and also contact center solutions. We want to be the layer that is going to be sitting on top of all these systems of record, being a system of orchestration and being basically the interface between people and the company, and delivering as much value as possible, not only to our customers, but also to the customers of our customers, right? And I think it's a great place to be. I'm very excited personally. And I think our mission is amazing because I am also a user, right? I'm also an end customer. So if I improve whatever process of a customer or even of a government, right, that impacts directly in me also. And I think we're going to create a better world for everyone, where we have more time to do other stuff that we like, instead of sitting for 20 minutes on the phone and not getting something resolved,
I cannot agree more. I think at the end it's about providing value, helping not only our customers, but also our customers' customers. I always think about how would my life be like in the future, where I, as a salesperson, I only spend time talking to customers instead of doing all of the things that come together now as kind of homework that you need to do after every meeting. So I couldn't agree more. I think it comes in your field, kind of customer service, but also in sales. I think it comes with many other functions as well. And yeah, Toni, I think this was a chapter or an episode full of learnings. I'm generally very, very excited about all of your leadership and what you actually bring to the industry in your field. I think you guys have something very special that you've developed. And yeah, I cannot wait to see how your expansion across different markets and geographies is going to land over the next years. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you guys when you are a unicorn. And probably we can bring you back to the podcast.
Let's do it.
And ask you actually, what did you do to make it happen? Because that's
what's the secret recipe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Secret for success. How do we make it happen? So, Toni, thanks a million. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you for having me. It has been great conversation, I have to say.
Let's keep in touch. And yeah, always in Zurich here for our listeners. And yeah, please comment and ask in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts about the future of sales with AI. Thank you very much and see you in the next one.